we believe one injection in your life is enough to, control the disease.
Fellow Homo sapiens, welcome to Epilepsy Sparked Insights. Now, not everybody realises it, but as our guest this week, neurologist and epileptologist José Serratosa explains, seizures are only one symptom of an epilepsy and sometimes not the worst symptom. And he shall share with us how, to him, the most exciting potential for us when it comes to improving the lives of people with and families affected by the epilepsies is gene therapy. Please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so that we can educate way more people affected by the epilepsies around the world.
Hi, Torie. It's a pleasure to be in your podcast. And I am a neurologist and epileptologist with a special interest in genetics, but my interest in genetics is focused especially in doing something useful for the patients after we find the abnormal mutations or the gene that is involved in a special or specific type of epilepsy. So I work in a university hospital here in Madrid, in the epilepsy unit. That's the clinical part of the work, and in a research lab where we do new therapies. We study new therapies for a specific type of epilepsy.
Why did you decide to focus on these epilepsies?
60 to 70% of the epilepsies are well controlled, and most patients have not many problems in life, but the rest of the epilepsies are really a problem for the patients, and the genetic epilepsies are especially a problem because they usually come together with psychomotor delay and cognitive problems, motor problems, etc. So some patients even die because of the epilepsy and the whole clinical picture. So I thought it would be, more useful to try to solve these epilepsies and help the patients with effective treatments.
Yeah, often I think they're kind of abandoned, especially if there isn't a specialist around, and people might say, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. I'll put them on this drug and hope and let them get on with it. And yeah, unfortunately, that still does happen. So you showed me before our call this really fancy, I confess I got intellectually excited, to my potential intellectually excited about this presentation titled Future Epilepsy Therapies, and mentioning, of course, precision medicine, which is a very important but quite a trendy term. What does the future hold for us when it comes to epilepsy therapies, and especially when we're talking about genetic epilepsies?
I think we will have more specific treatments that target the specific abnormality, and we will also treat not only the epileptic seizures, but also the other problems that are associated with epilepsy. This can be cognitive problems, motor problems, psychiatric problems, etc.
That's really important and, heartwarming to hear, because it depends on the individual, of course, but often seizures are seen as just one aspect of what we go through, and they might not be of priority for us to improve quality of life.
Exactly. In the last, 200-300 years, the efforts have been directed to treat the seizures. And that's why the new name of the medications is anti-seizure medications, because they really treat only the seizures. So now what we want to treat is the whole picture of the epilepsy. And for that, we need to not only treat the seizures, with non-specific drugs, but to treat the whole bunch of symptoms that are coming together with the seizures. So that's what we can do we may be able to do with the new therapies.
I love it. And so, and I am reading out a list, to be fair, just so everyone knows, but so we're looking at gene therapy. How do I pronounce it? So antisense, I can't say it right. oligonucleotides, antibody enzyme replacement, drug repositioning, and small molecules. Could you give us a little oversight of that, please, these approaches?
Okay, the most exciting in my view is gene therapy for the many, probably hundreds of genetic epilepsies that are around and have been discovered, because what we can do is usually replace a gene that is abnormal, that has a mutation, with a normal gene. So it's maybe the most simple way of thinking. If you have let's say a broken gene, let's put in a normal gene, and hopefully if we do this early enough, we can prevent the disease, and in some cases that have evolved, we can prevent the disease from progressing. So this is gene replacement therapy, which can be very useful for recessive diseases where there is no gene working. Both copies of the gene are abnormal. For other genetic diseases, we have other, as you said, other forms of treating that may be more useful. But I would also like to mention gene therapy for focal epilepsies. And there is a group in London at UCL that is injecting genes that code for ion channels of different types in the epileptic focus that can change the microenvironment of the brain in the focus and control this way the epileptic seizure. So instead of taking out a piece of the brain, which is maybe not very precise or very refined, we may be able in the future to inject a gene. So just to inject a viral vector with a gene in the focus, so that wouldn't make any, deficit or problems as you can have with resections, and it may be able to control the seizures. So that's being developed, and it works in animal models.
That is so cool, because whenever I think of gene therapy, I always think of generalized epilepsies. And so for it to be potentially applicable to people who have a focal epilepsy, that's a really big deal.
Exactly. That may be as easy as going to the hospital and having an injection in part of the brain where your focus is, and hopefully you could be cured.
Where would we get the matter that is injected? So the gene, is it something that's put together sourced originally from the patient's own DNA, or how does that work?
Well, this is a construct that is prepared or fabricated in a facility where a special type of virus is processed, and it's basically an artificial virus where we can insert the gene that we want to be expressed.
So it's like and it's a useful virus, rather than saying, there are many non-useful viruses, and it kind of infects, is that the right word? But basically passes on the message to the genes surrounding it.
Yeah. Well, these are actually, we call them viral vectors. They are not really viruses. So what the best vectors do is just float in the cell, inside the cell, and produce the protein that is not being produced by the abnormal gene. They don't integrate into the normal DNA.
Okay.
So they don't go and,
change everything.
Exactly. Because if that happens, you break a normal gene and make things worse. So they just float in the cytoplasm, they don't reproduce. They don't hopefully produce an immune reaction, but they may. That's the main problem, one of the main problems. So there are, just like vectors, that's why we call them vectors, that carry the gene into the cell without producing any abnormality.
And so you say this can be autoimmune response. Is that because it's identified as being a foreign body?
Yeah.
And so we have to figure out a way for that not to happen. Is that where we are?
Exactly. That's one of the problems some vectors may have, but the good thing about gene therapy is that we believe one injection in your life is enough to, control the disease.
That would be life-changing for millions of people. And I'm sure, I have, I don't know numbers, but the investment required for the research into this is staggering. But once this could roll out, just a simple injection for people to prevent their epilepsy from occurring, the seizures and the morbidities that go with it. Just thinking how that could alter a person's life. Thank you so much to José for sharing with us such empathy when it comes to patient and family experiences with the epilepsies, plus his own hope and excitement when it comes to gene therapies. Do check out more about José and his work on the website torierobinson.com, where you can also access the podcast, the video and the transcription of this episode. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel. Share this episode with your friends, colleagues, family members, whoever it might be, and see you next week.